Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast, where empathy meets action in the world of leadership. Your host, Gino Degregori, engages with innovators and seasoned professionals from diverse sectors, all demonstrating the power of leading with kindness. And now, your host, Gino Degregori.
Today's guest believes that leadership isn't about perfection. It's about progress. If you've ever felt like a terrible leader, this episode will show you how those moments can lead to transformative growth. I'm Gino Degregori, and welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast. Our guest today, Layci Nelson, is the founder and president of Transcend Leadership Collective, based in Yakima, Washington, with a background in social work and over a decade of experience in leadership development. Layci has trained thousands of leaders across agriculture, manufacturing, and beyond. She's also the host of a podcast, Confessions of a Terrible Leader, where she explores the raw truth of leadership growth. Why does this conversation matter today for us? Layci's HHART-First framework, healthy conflict, honest communication, acceptance, respect, and trust, offers a practical approach to building resilient, people-centered leadership cultures, especially in high-pressure industries. Layci, welcome. To kick us off, can you share with us a little bit about you and your journey, please?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I am a first-generation college graduate and also a first-generation high school graduate. So I was born and raised in a trailer court in Union Gap, Washington, which is a tiny city just outside of Yakima that you think you're in Yakima, but you're not. You're actually in Union Gap. So I was raised with the people that make the engine turn in American life. So I was surrounded by people, including my own family, who are working in the packing houses for our produce, working in the fields, fixing our cars, on manufacturing lines, painting lines on our roads. Those are all literally jobs of, I'm thinking of real friends that I grew up with, and that's what their parents were doing, just some of the jobs. And the reality of just working class, but still really living in poverty, even though people are working. And some of it is was just limited income. But in my family, I'm also the child of my dad passed this year, but he was in active addiction when I was born until I was about 9. And so a lot of financial ruin to climb out of, right? So combination of he didn't graduate high school, so low skills, I would say in some ways. In other ways, he's absolutely a genius and had amazing skills. And then really some harmful life choices, was my personal story of why poverty was a reality for me as a kid. So yeah, that was my foundation. And I went to college and I immediately was drawn to sociology and psychology. And I was just, first of all, culture shock of coming out of, high school was culture shock too, but college was like a whole nother level. I went to a private university. I was surrounded by kids who came out of a different level of wealth that I'd even experienced in high school in that transition, different norms, different expectations. I had to code switch, figure all that out. Right. And I was so fascinated with, why are we so different yet we're so similar? And how does society shape us? How do norms shape us? And sociology was just eye-opening for me as we would start to understand how that all comes together. And I would sit in class and just be like, they're talking about my family, my people, where I grew up. And I think one of the things that I'm very fiery, very protective personality, very proud of who I am and where I came from. And one of the things that was really hard for me was just this complete disconnect from the reality of what it means to live that way and the stereotypes and the assumptions that would come out in my classmates in discussion. And there was no malintention. It was just ignorance on their part. And so I really was like, wow, we got to do something about this. This disconnect between different realities in America was really real for me and hold into sharp relief. And so fast forward a little bit, I decided I liked psychology and sociology, but all we did was analyze problems. We didn't talk about frameworks for solutions. And even in my 20s, I was like, I want solutions, at least at the undergrad level. We weren't talking about that yet. In my teens, I guess I didn't hit my 20s until almost halfway through. So then I was like, I want to study social work. And when I started studying social work, I was immediately drawn to, most people think of like the individual interpersonal aspect. There's also a macro aspect of social work that examines systems. And so I was drawn to that immediately. Systemic. How do we create systemic change? How do we even identify what that change needs to be? And that was really what started me down the path that I am now on today, like 20 something years later. And it took many different forms before I started my business. I had 15 years experience at a director level in different organizations that were working on systemic, actually workforce development stuff and different variations of that. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. But I had my kids and I took a little break from the workforce. My husband finished up his doctorate and we moved back home. I didn't live in Yakima during that time. I moved back home as an adult and I was ready to go back to work. I wanted to work again. And I, being me, wanted it on my terms. And but I didn't have the professional network here where I'm at now. So I didn't have parents that were connected that could, hey, slide her in. I had no professional network here. So I knew in order to work at the level I was going to that I wanted to work at and have it be just when my kids were little, a few hours a week, I was going to have to do it differently. And I started out 10 years ago as a solopreneur and today have a leadership consultancy, a firm, and we've got 10 people on the team. So
Amazing. Congratulations. What a journey, what a story and perseverance, hard work, vision, right? Visionary person, all those things, so amazing to where you are now and how you're impacting lives now. And, being a first generation graduate in college, that's huge, right? So in the transition or transformation, right? Understanding the two different worlds is very intriguing. I would love to pick a thread here in a second after I'll ask the first question, but because I can relate to a lot of that. I was born in Peru, came to this country not knowing a word of English, and the culture shock of like where I was and where I is. Maybe we will talk a little about that. But the first question that I love asking my guests is, what does being a kind leader mean to you?
I love that question. A kind leader is a leader who offers clarity and offers decisiveness and meets people where they're at with what they need. So kindness is not a disposition. It's an action. It's a series of actions.
I love it. The clarity, very succinct, and it is clarity, right? And being able to understand and communicating and connecting with those individuals that you're being clear towards, right?
Yes.
Which makes a difference. Because if you're unsure, if you're not this and that, or you're letting them guess or trying to play different games, that's not being kind. That's like, it's the opposite.
I always let people know, like, what's an internal awareness system, right? When you're starting to be the problem, when you're the boss, is when you start feeling resentments build towards your employees. Those little, it usually starts small. It doesn't, most of the situations where you have an employee or someone you're working with and relationally, it just feels off. There's not any major performance things happening. It's just a bunch of little things. And you're like, I don't know if I want to make a big deal out of it.
Right.
And you think you're letting stuff go. But if you are starting to build resentment towards that person, you're not letting it go. And that isn't kind because it's going to affect the way that you treat them. And they're going to feel it relationally. And they're not going to know why. And that is the opposite of kindness, is holding people to expectations that they don't even know you have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, and you can't expect people to guess and wonder. And to your point, it's like, there's an imaginary goalpost, right?
Yeah.
that like only we know, or like the people that are not kind, right, would know,
Right.
right? And expecting. So yeah, so for sure,
Yeah.
I love your definition. It's a different angle that I've heard in the past,
Mm.
which different gives you different perspective. And that's why I like asking that question, because
Yeah.
it's unique definition. At the end of the day, there's obviously empathy and
Yes.
and
Those are all
drive,
important.
important, right? But I love how you broke that. We were just talking about your journey and the challenges you went through, and I love what you said about you did not have anything like to build and execute the framework, right?
Yeah.
Everything you were taught was all about that. So, talking about your framework and that you build here with your company, the HHART-First leadership framework. Can you expand on that and explain how you came up with it, first of all, and what are the different letters that describe
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, how I came up with it was making a lot of mistakes. So, and doing a lot of research and looking at, and personally, not any technical studies, but reading the longitudinal studies, digging into why does, and this, I don't know if your audience knows this or not, but most leadership training actually doesn't work
Mm,
when you go to measure what change happened
mhm.
over the last year. There's not a lot of great results out there. And if I was going to take people's money and say, we're going to teach you how to lead effectively,
Yeah,
I needed to first understand why it didn't work.
right.
Where did it fall apart? Why did people get so excited in the moment and feel so motivated in the moment? And then it didn't stick. There wasn't application. So
Mhm.
that because it does feel good. It feels really good to go to a great leadership training.
Oh yeah,
And yeah, but when there's no measurable impact a year later, why? What's
right,
the point, right? I'm extremely pragmatic. So I was like, we got to figure that out. And
right.
so reading through the studies and figuring out and the background I have, which I already shared, I probably had a little bit unique perspective on some things and figured out that what is actually the most foundational pieces of what creates a high performance team, which is what the outcome of most leaders
Right,
want is I want to lead so I can have a
right,
high performance team, right? So they are not the things that we get taught in leadership training first or that we get taught to focus on. There's a lot of trainings that focus on vision, mission,
right.
results, how to speak with clarity of accountability. All of those things
Mhm.
are important, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They matter, but they're not foundational. And so the foundational pieces and what all of the bodies of research that I dug into and studied over the years of putting this together all pointed to what each letter of the HHART-First stands for. And these are the things, and I will go into them, that make the difference. So, what actually makes the difference and makes a high performance team? You got to have those other pieces in place. But if you're missing the ability to have healthy conflict, you want conflict, you just want the healthy kind,
Right.
honest communication, and understand what it takes to build and implement it, cultures
Mhm.
of acceptance, respect, and trust. Those combined ingredients, when you've got all of those factors and you know how to execute them with consistency and communicate them effectively, then you're set up to fly with your frameworks,
Yeah.
with your fancy software. You're not going to be limited. But those foundational pieces are often almost 10 times out of 10 when we go into organizations as well as reading other case studies. There's something in that equation
Right.
of the HHART that's off. And that's the limiting factor. Like we're solving for the wrong problem, we're solving for symptoms.
Mm,
One of those issues is typically at the root. So
mhm.
we're going to start there, make sure your team understands and you understand as a leader how to cultivate those. So it's not just knowing what they are. We train
Right.
on, okay, how do you practically make it happen? And
Right.
doing it through a lens of psychology, sociology, and neuroscience.
Beautiful. Thank you for walking us through. And that's amazing kind of framework that you just walked us through. And definitely have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the foundation is, I love what you said, is people do focus on the results and the vision and the future state and all that stuff, which is very important, right? Especially from a business, right?
Right.
We're here to make money, or if it's a non-profit or government, they're there to support the mission, right?
Yep.
And citizens and all that stuff, right? But they forget that, what is the impact that we're really making? And what do we need to do as individuals, as leaders in an organization to look within, right? I always felt like self-reflection as myself first. Like, what are the things that I need in order to be a better leader, right? Yes, I've always been, I would say, consider myself a kind person, but I was also very clear on what I wanted. So I was very direct too in my direction and my progression. It wasn't easy, right? There's always been ups and downs and challenges here and there. That's just life. But understanding who I am and how do I fit in the ecosystem, let's say, of the other leaders and the culture that we're building is critical. And also, understanding the personalities are important. So, so just giving you my perspective, how I was thinking about those things as you were explaining the framework, how important it is, because at the end of the day, it's not just about the goals, the numbers, right? It's about, I feel like it's all about the people too, and knowing each other and building that connection and the understanding will take us so much farther than anything else.
Yes, absolutely. And really, we look for organizations. We're actually on a mission to work with the 25 most influential employers in America. And we are and we have a rubric for identifying that.
Yeah.
And so we are looking for organizations that want to partner with us, that want to learn our methodologies. We need to have an alignment of core values. And so our core values as an organization are people over profit. Now, that doesn't mean we don't like to make money. We like to make money. I intentionally did not make us a nonprofit for a lot of reasons. And what does that actually mean in practice is it means that we use money for the love of people. We use money to love people well versus the inverse of using people for the love of money.
Yeah.
So we're not going to abuse people or step on people or manipulate people to get money. And we're not more money. We're not going to do the wrong thing by someone. And so that is one of the alignment pieces that we look for in organizations. We also need to help leaders understand, like, if you really want to be a life-changing leader, you need to know how to motivate, engage, and inspire. And you need to understand, and you touched on this a little bit a second ago, where your intentions are out of alignment with your actual impact.
Right.
So I actually have never met a leader who says, I would really like to make my employees' lives miserable. I would really like to be confusing, domineering, make them feel like less valuable than, I've never met that person. Maybe they exist, but I definitely have met people that are having those results, but they don't intend those results.
Right.
And so what we do in our organization through that framework is we train and assess where it starts with you. It starts with your self-reflection, as you were saying. Where is my impact out of alignment with my intentions?
Right.
And then depending on what that looks like for you, you're going to have different moves to make than the person next to you. Right. It's not a template solution. Wouldn't that be nice? But it's not.
No, I love that what you're saying as it relates to people over profit. And that's actually what we do, right? And it's like, how can we help our people become the better version of themselves?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
And we, through inspiration, through guidance, through mentorship, through the different skills and training that we provide, we embody that. I mean, we have our core values describe kind, K-I-N-D, right? So kind leader being the first one, right? The other one is impactful innovation, nurturing talent, and then dependable service, right? Those are kind of the four things that we focus on. And it's not just lip service. I mean, it starts at the top, and it's like we talk about it every week, every other week. We, we fire people or improve people, right?
Yeah.
Based on those core beliefs. But it's not easy, like you said. You have to be intentional.
Yes.
Because we're humans at the end of the day. We have our goals, we have our things, but life happens. And, how do you navigate through that? And how do you, because everything is moving fast around us,
Yes.
with technology, with we got to slow it down a little bit. And this is what I tell people. It's like, you need to make sure you slow down to go fast.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
And then appreciate living the now. It's a big thing that I learned around the pandemic time. I was doing a leadership training, and it taught me to do meditation. And I've never done meditation. It's like, I don't do meditation. That's for weak people, now. And it opened up so much to me. That what it really allowed me to do, and I share this with the audience, is you start appreciating the now instead of living in the future or in the past. Right? That's where it gets you the depressed or anxious, right? But if you start living in the now, appreciate this, like this moment right here, that we're creating, Layci, and that we're providing this platform and education to the audience is amazing, right? And the lives that we're potentially, whoever's listening, we are impacting and saying something, even could be just one word or one sentence, that now their life is changed in a good way. We hope, right? So I love what you're doing, and I really appreciate kind of that framework. How does that, if you could explain to us, how have you seen this work in some of those customers that you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely. So our services have 3 pillars, right? So when we're going in and what is the work that we're doing, we are doing either executive coaching, one-to-one, group coaching, where we're taking them through our emerging leader. We have it's called the Lift. It's a program designed to help people that really, really want to know what it takes to be a great leader. And they've got the humility to know, I've got some gaps. This is a intensive that we take groups through in 90 days. We also go into organizations and customize it for organizations and take their teams through it. And we provide also facilitation for those other pieces that are critical, strategic planning, because oftentimes we find the clarity is missing. And so we will facilitate and do implementation support around that. So what do we see when we go into organizations? What impact do we have? Well, first of all, it's usually not, sometimes it's really big. It's a huge, massive culture shift.
Right.
Sometimes. A lot of times it's small adjustments and alignments that they just can't see need made because you can't read the label from inside the jar. And so we will come in, and the way we work is, because I obviously very much value the front line. We ask the front line, what do your supervisors need to know? What do they need to know that they don't know? What's working for you? What's not working for you? And we also provide every service in English and in our community in English and Spanish.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I am not fluent in Spanish, but there are several people on my team that are. And we make sure that every voice is heard and counts, and everyone that wants to make sure that their perspective is understood, that it can be understood, right? And for us, that's foundational to acceptance, respect, and trust. Is like, you can talk to me in your primary, not me. Well, you can. I understand a lot more Spanish than I speak, but we make sure that they can be as comfortable as possible in their communications and really get their point across. So I speak like about a 2-year-old in Spanish. So I can only imagine the frustration of trying to express yourself in a language that you're learning, which I'm sure you know firsthand. So.
Right. It's funny, real quick, I come into this country in the early 90s, not knowing, I'm fluent in Spanish still, right? I haven't forgotten. And coming in, and such an impact in, I knew a little bit, but not a lot, right? And I was thrown into school. And what happened to me, though, I picked it up fairly quick. As a young kid, you pick it up. My parents didn't pick it up as quickly, right?
Yeah.
So I was around 10, 12, around that time, and I needed to learn, help them.
Yeah.
So I started reading documents, translating documents, getting on the phone and translating, and my voice hadn't changed it. I thought it was my mom at times. So like, no. It's like just helping to translate. That's all. And it was really, I think that shaped a lot of the perseverance and just maturity and understanding kind of like the big picture and what I needed to do. And like I said, that just it was such an experience, and I was grateful for my parents to make the trek, and leaving country, their family and stuff like that, to come here to provide a better life, right, for us and the kids. And now, living the American dream. That's such an amazing, I feel like, very grateful, and it's a good story.
Yeah.
Make them very proud. So I'm sorry, I was just wanted to share that impact there for.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. Yeah. So we go in and we start with the least influential people in the organization and ask them, what's everyday life actually like for you? And where's there need to be more clarity? And then when we're working and designing a program for a company, that is not typically how they're built. It's unfortunately rare that the people that are least influential have a big impact in the formation of what's going to be taught. And so, I mean, often it does reinforce the foundations of I say we have ingredients. We have all these HHART-First ingredients on the shelf. And we're going to pull the ingredients in different amounts dependent upon what we learn that is going to be the most impactful for the organization. Wow. And oftentimes we will hear the leadership will say, we need essentially a German chocolate cake. And the frontline says, we need brownies.
Right.
And so the flavor is consistent, or at least the chocolate, but so we go in and then take that information, take our expertise, our lens, and actually get sign off from the people that have been that are on the formation committee. And we say, is this what you want them to learn? Right. Then we present it to the top, and the top makes their changes, but they actually are very receptive. And when we ask them to start forming a committee after we've signed contract, they're really excited to do it. And oftentimes a little bit like, gosh, why haven't we done this before? And we're like, well, that's why we're here. There's no shame. You're doing it now. Let's move forward and help you in this way. So.
Thank you for walking us through. And it sounds like you're this is kind of successful in making sure that, I love what you said. Like, we have the recipe or the ingredients, and maybe some of the recipes in the background and the shelves that we can pull, and then we talk, and then we create the right message or the right thing that your organization needs.
Yeah.
So, the audience here is a mix of a bunch of leaders out there, but at different levels, coming out of college or experienced individuals out there leading things. What is one thing that you could advise to them as they're navigating? Maybe they're the front leaders, right?
Yeah.
And they want to communicate to be heard about some of the things. Is there a particular thing that you could advise them to push the information up, or is there strategy? What do you recommend?
Great question. If you are someone who wants your message heard, and you have insight, and I believe you do have insight that's valuable, that can help leadership that's above you, the way that you can frame it is align how what you're saying is going to move the strategy of the company forward. So if you can frame it up in any sort of change that needs made, or a frustration, instead of, hey, there's this problem, you guys need to fix it, which that's true, but but framing it up as like, all right, I'm observing this thing that's happening. And this thing that's happening is limiting the productivity, or is limiting the I see that if there is a small adjustment made in this area, our department is going to be able to hit our goals more effectively, efficiently. And I would love to be a collaborative part of helping you solve that problem. So you're also positioning yourself to not just say, this is something that needs fixed, but I can be part of fixing it.
Right.
I just need your buy-in, and you have the authority to approve that I can do it or not. And so if you can frame things up that way and speak as a collaborative partner and not just, I don't like this, fix it, you're going to be received and perceived, actually, as that's a huge green flag for like leadership potential.
Yeah,
And it's just that
absolutely.
small shift
Yeah.
in the way you present things.
Yeah.
So,
And I know there's always a fear, right? It's like, oh,
yeah.
well, how is it going to be perceived? But I love how you framed it. Like, if you can tie that problem to how we could improve the vision or the direction or the
Yeah.
strategy of the organization, it's going to allow that leader, the supervisor, or whatever, to connect to that. It's like, oh, shoot,
Yes.
we can, this is impacting this, and that's going to impact how I meet my numbers potentially or my goals or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
it makes sense. Great tip for sure.
And also, oftentimes, and this goes both ways. This goes for leaders that are talking to employees about things they want to see different, and it goes up as well. We tend to frame things up and make character judgments.
Mm.
And so we tend to say things like, or at least hold the belief, and so it comes out in the way we talk, like, you don't care,
Yeah.
or this person just doesn't want to work hard, or they're
Right.
being lazy, or whatever. And that gets us nowhere except
Mhm.
immediate defenses.
Yeah.
So telling your boss that they don't care about you
Yeah.
is going to do nothing except
Yeah.
shut them down.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they're going to be defensive, and they're not going to say this likely, but it's probably going to hurt their feelings too.
Yeah.
Because they probably do care about you, even if they're really bad at demonstrating it,
Yeah.
So it's not going to get anywhere to lead with that.
Right.
And so it's leading with going in a way that allows them to not immediately, as Brene Brown calls it, armor up,
Yeah.
but to say, hey, I see this challenge. And in fact, I think it's probably something that you'd want to solve too.
Right.
I would love to brainstorm with you on this.
Right.
That is a much different approach than, well, you don't care about us anyway.
Right.
If you cared more about us, then this wouldn't even be happening.
And that's why it's so important building that container in your organization where there is a safe space almost, right? Where
honest communication
for sure. Where, that trust, the connection.
Yep.
So important. And again, we're not perfect, but we're building that, right? We're creating, because people coming in from another organization, like, is this for real? Like, are you sure? No.
Yes. Yes. I've grown my team, and I have had multiple employees in the process of onboarding. They're like, is this real? And they don't tell me until they've been on for about a year that they're like, I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the whole year. Like, this is not actually happening. Right.
Yeah.
And you will get tested. I have been
Mhm.
tested so many times. And most of the time I rise to the occasion, but the key is when I don't, is to own that part too. Like,
Absolutely.
hey, I let you down in this way. I did not meet my own internal standard.
Mhm.
Or personal story, I lost my dad.
Mm.
It hasn't even been a year yet. And right before my dad died, I had brought on a contractor to work on a big initiative.
Mhm.
And my dad died pretty, it was unexpected.
Sorry to
He
hear
was
that.
ill, but it wasn't like we knew it was imminent. He wasn't in the hospital or anything.
Right.
So we knew it was imminent, but not right then.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Right.
all that to say, horrible timing work
Yeah.
world-wise. When my dad passed, I had just brought this guy on to do this big initiative with us. And in my ignorance of the weight of grief of losing a parent, I thought, oh, we'll figure it out, right? And I should have paused.
Yeah.
I should have asked to pause the contract, and he would have.
Yeah.
But I didn't. And so I ended up not leading in the way that I wanted to on this project, not onboarding him into the team the way that needed to happen, not clarifying communication or my expectations. And of course, it didn't go so well, and caused a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
And I had to come back to my team and own that and be like, hey, I overestimated my capacity and I made a mistake.
Right.
So I apologize to you guys for making work life harder than it needed to be.
Yeah.
I learned, and I hope I won't make this, I'll pause things in the future.
Yeah.
And they extended me such a tremendous amount of grace, but I still had to own it, right?
Right.
Like, I had to go and say, so we're
And that is-
all always learning.
Absolutely. And then that is critical for the audience here. And I think something to keep in mind and highlight to that story you just did is owning it, right? I know that we've got a lot of challenge, but if you make a mistake as a kind leader out there, it's your job, I feel like, is to talk about it, right? Be like going
Yes.
back to being honest. I messed
Yes.
up. I was not in the right frame
Mm-hmm.
of mind, or something happened. I did not mean to emotionally explode or whatever that may be. But we're
Right.
not all perfect, right?
Right.
But you taking the step of owning that mistake or owning that, it creates such a big connection and impact with that relationship that you're
Mm-hmm.
building with your peers, with your boss, with your subordinates. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter, right? So
Right.
thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a really good story. And sorry to hear about your dad. So,
Thank you.
but I know we can talk. It sounds like we can talk all day long.
I think we could.
I love your stories, but let's go ahead and start kind of coming down here with a few questions here. There is one thing that I started adding is flip the mic, which is like my guest to ask me a question. Is there a particular question you have for me?
Why, yes, there is. And I wasn't sure what it was going to be until we had our conversation. So I would love to know, as a person myself who leads a multicultural team and works with teams that are integrating people that are coming up from South America, Central America, from different cultures, what is something that, if we are in a position of leadership, how can we be kind leaders and help people that are in that wild transition of culture change when they're
Mhm.
coming into the American workforce from somewhere else?
What a question. Great question. And, obviously my experience, and we're talking about decades, right?
Right.
More than, I guess, 30 plus years now since I've been in
Yeah.
different times, I think, but also relevant to, I
Mhm.
think, immigrating into a new country is such a big impact. Like I'm trying to find a different word than impact. It's such it's not only the language,
Mhm.
it's also the culture.
Yes. Yes.
And then a culture has multiple things because it's how you talk, how you dress, how you communicate with someone. Even your
Mhm.
verbal gestures are different. Not
Yes.
verbal, sorry, your hand motions are
Yeah.
different, right?
Your
So
body language is
your
totally
body language,
different.
that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you. So it took me a while as a kid, right? And I consider myself an introvert,
Mhm.
but at that time, I needed to become an extrovert or at least to put myself out there, be vulnerable, and like navigate through that. So I think to advise you, or as you guys talk to other, is really not only connecting, but trying to understand, right? To
Mhm.
your point, to you're saying, like when you go into an organization, you talk to the frontline on what
Mhm.
their perspective is or what are some of the things. Is getting down to connecting with those people at what is it that you're trying to accomplish too? What is your perspective into knowing the American culture? What can we
Yeah.
do to help? Right. So all of that to summarize to say is connection, right? Connecting with those people
Yes.
and truly understanding what they want to do. So hopefully that answers the question.
That's a great answer. Be curious, be authentic,
Yeah.
and be humble. Like,
Humble. Yeah.
I don't know what it's like to have
Yeah.
your lived experience, and I
Yeah.
want to understand
Exactly.
how. Teach me, right? I
Yeah.
think that goes
Yeah.
a long way.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. People are hungry. I feel like people that come to this country are hungry to grow. They're hungry for
Yes.
knowledge. They're hungry for,
It's
impacting and creating and contributing, right? So
an incredible testament to anyone that even just picks up their life and goes to a completely different.
yeah.
That alone is an act of bravery and resilience. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm so grateful for my
absolutely.
parents. Always, always, always
Yeah.
will be. But all right, so I got a few. Thank you for that question. I have a few rapid questions here
Okay,
for
let's
you.
go.
What's one book every leader should read?
Dare to Lead, Brene Brown.
Oh, love it. Favorite quote or mantra?
You are not more important than anyone else, but never forget that no one else is more important than you. That was from my dad.
Ooh, beautiful. If you could have coffee with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
Well, of course, I don't want to say my dad, but past or present. That's a really hard one for me. Harriet Tubman.
Mm,
And why? Because I want to know how to tap into that level of bravery
mhm.
and just absolute self-sacrifice and a true willingness of putting it all on the line for the belief and the betterment of humanity. And
Yeah.
I really I always want to leave people better than I found them. I always want to be moving us towards love and helping people know, cultivating belonging versus fitting in, and
Yeah.
her bravery, I want to just sit at her feet and soak it in and learn.
Yeah.
So,
That's amazing. Thank you.
yeah.
So as we close out here, where can people find you?
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. So I'm really active on LinkedIn, and Layci's Layci. I don't know if there's another Layci Nelson on LinkedIn. I don't think there is that way. So I'm easy to find. But we also have a website, transcendleadershipcollective.com. You can connect there, learn more about what we do. And then if you enjoy podcasts, which I'm assuming you do if you're listening, you can find us on Confessions of a Terrible Leader. You can hop over there, and we have these kinds of similar discussions often. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. So what's a final message you would like to leave with our leaders here?
Final message. If you want to build connection with your people, they have to believe that you really like them. And no one wants a boss no one wants to do anything for a leader that they don't think actually likes them. And it sounds very elementary and foundational. It is. It is very elementary. We learned this in elementary school. Like, be nice to people.
Yes.
Not just nice, kind, right?
Yes.
People need to believe that you like them. And
Yeah.
so if your face lights up when you see them, if you greet them with warmth, it's the little things that are day after day consistencies that are going to build that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Layci. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, the journey. What an amazing journey, to be honest. And I'm super excited to have spoken with you and publishing this out to the audience here. So I look forward to maybe future podcasts that we can kind of do together. But there's so much more to talk about.
I know. This was wonderful. I appreciate you. I appreciate this opportunity, and all the listeners. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks to the audience. Thank you for listening to the Kind Leader Podcast. And remember, be kind, bring value, or rise together. Have an amazing day.